Tonight, Chicago reeks of rain and gasoline, that familiar scent of a city that never sleeps. Cold wind sweeps through rows of old brick buildings, where the neon lights of La Verona Cafe shimmer on the wet pavement. Inside, the smell of roasted garlic bread mingles with coffee and jazz. And on the modest corner stage, Audrey Parker stands a simple black dress, hugging her slender frame, her fingers resting lightly on the microphone as if holding a secret. The piano begins. She closes her eyes and releases the first note, low, warm, and soaked in longing. Anima e cor, an old Italian song in a dialect nearly forgotten. The same song her grandmother used to hum on late autumn afternoons when sunlight filtered through the window and caught the silver threads in her hair. The room falls silent. Cutlery pauses mid-air. Only her voice remains flowing with the piano threading through every breath. From the back of the cafe, a man stands up. No one knows who he is, but his presence is unmistakable, cold, precise, impossible to ignore. A black suit, leather gloves, an aura that slows the air itself. Lucas Miller, a name only Chicago truly understands, both a legend and a warning. He didn't come for the music. He came because he heard that melody the only one woman in the world had ever sung for him, his mother. And now, here in a small cafe on the north side, this young woman was singing it again with the same pronunciation, the same pauses, the same haunting tremor in every note. Lucas froze. A storm of memories surged through him, the image of Maria Miller, his mother gone for more than 20 years. The Italian woman who fled her homeland to escape the shadow of a family name. The song ended to scattered applause, but Lucas didn't clap. He walked toward the stage slowly, like a man walking through a dream. Audrey noticed him. She stopped mid-step, sensing the weight of his stare. His eyes deep, as Lake Michigan in winter, were cold and sorrowful. Yet when they met hers, there was a faint crack in the ice where light slipped through. "Where did you learn that song?" His voice was low-edged with something restrained. Audrey hesitated. "My grandmother taught me. She was born in southern Italy near Naples." Lucas stiffened. "Her name, Lina Romano." The answer hit him like a shot through memory. His mother, Maria Miller, once had a dearest friend, a Romano. Coincidence? Or something deeper, more dangerous? Audrey gave a polite nod, thinking he was just another customer moved by nostalgia. But Lucas didn't leave. His gaze held hers, filled with something she couldn't name, part memory, part warning. Later that night, when the cafe lights dimmed, Audrey gathered her things. Outside, Lucas was still there, sitting beneath the awning, cigarette in hand, rain tracing his shoulders. "You're still here?" "Yes." "Do you want to hear another song?" He looked up the corner of his mouth, curving faintly. "No. I want to know why you can sing in a language that's nearly extinct." Audrey smiled faintly. "Because it's all I have left of my family." "They're gone." She nodded. "My grandmother passed last year. My parents divorced and disappeared. I stay here translating books, singing for rent money, counting every dollar." Lucas was silent for a while, then reached into his coat and handed her a card. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. Come to this address. I have something for you to do." "Who are you, Lucas?" He paused, voice lowering. "Lucas Miller." Audrey froze. That name, she'd heard it before. In news reports, in whispers around the harbor, the heir to Chicago's most powerful underground syndicate. The man behind the docks and behind the disappearances no one dared mention. "You've got the wrong person." "No?" His voice was calm. "I want you to translate some letters, old Italian Southern dialect. You're the only one in Chicago who speaks it like my mother did." At the mention of his mother, his tone faltered, a hairline crack in the armor. Audrey felt something stir, not trust, but something close enough to make her nod. "All right, but I don't work for the Mafia." Lucas raised an eyebrow. "Good, I'm not hiring you for crime." He walked away, leaving behind the mingled scent of smoke and rain, sharp, warm, and heavy with unspoken meaning. The next morning, Audrey followed the address. Not a steel skyscraper, but an old stone building overlooking the Chicago River. An iron gate, ornate and silent. The doorman led her upstairs without a word. The second floor looked like a forgotten library, walnut shelves. Amber light, Italian books blanketed in dust. Lucas stood by the window, back straight, the morning light tracing the brown in his hair. He turned when she entered. "Thank you for coming. You don't seem like someone who usually asks strangers for help." "I don't." He handed her a small wooden box. "But these letters can't go to anyone else." She opened it. The faint smell of old paper and faded lavender rose up, and inside were delicate pages, handwritten in careful cursive. Signed Maria R. A chill crept down her spine. "Maria Romano," she whispered. Lucas's head lifted. "What did you say?" "Nothing. Just that it's my grandmother's maiden name. Coincidence." But his voice lacked conviction. She skimmed one page. "If one day my son finds these letters, tell him the past cannot stay buried forever. Truth must be found, even if its price is blood." Audrey looked up. Who was she writing to? Lucas's expression hardened. To the one who betrayed her. The air thickened. The old clock ticked steady, suffocating. Audrey folded the letter carefully, eyes meeting his, not with fear, but with a strange, growing familiarity. "You believe someone betrayed her?" "I don't believe," he said quietly. "I know." A simple sentence, yet enough for her to realize this man hadn't come by chance. He'd come chasing ghosts, and somehow she was now part of them. She took a breath, closing the box. "I'll translate them, but if I find anything wrong, I'll stop." Lucas's lips twitched a faint smile, but his eyes betrayed a quiet dread. "Do it, Audrey. Sometimes we don't get to choose which secrets stay buried." That evening, stepping out into the drizzle, Audrey paused on the steps, watching her reflection blur in the rain-streaked glass. Across the street, a black car sat idle, headlights off. Someone inside was watching. A chill rippled through her as a whisper, soft, distant in Italian, seemed to call her name. "Anima e cor." She turned. No one. Only Lucas's card fell from her pocket, its ink blurred by the rain, but one faint line still legible. "Non tutto l'amore porta alla luce." Not all love leads to light. Audrey bent down, heart pounding. In that moment, she didn't yet know the song she'd sung had just opened the door to a world she would never escape. If you've ever believed a song could change destiny, stay to hear the next part of this story. Morning draped Chicago in a thin veil of mist, soft enough to blur the city's harsh edges. Audrey stepped into the red brick building where Lucas Miller worked, feeling the weight of an unfamiliar stillness. No noise, no chaos, only order crafted by habit and power. A man in a gray suit opened the door and bowed slightly. "Mr. Miller is waiting in the library on the second floor." The library. The word itself sounded elegant, and it was. The space felt like another world within Chicago walls, lined with books, dark walnut wood, and tall windows that poured in pale winter light. In the center of the room, Lucas stood. He didn't look up when she entered. "Your coffee's on the table. No sugar, no milk." "Am I right?" Audrey blinked. "You guess well." "Not guessing," he said, turning toward her. "I pay attention." The words were simple, yet her heart missed a beat. There was something about the way he observed the world, cold, precise, yet tinged with a quiet, unspoken care he didn't seem aware of himself. On the table sat the same wooden box from the day before. Light passed through the glass lid, glinting on the faded ribbons that bound the letters yellowed by time. Audrey sat down and carefully untied the string. The letters were written on fine paper, now fragile and aged with handwriting soft and unmistakably feminine. Lucas stood behind her, leaning against the desk, holding a coffee cup he never drank. His gaze followed every movement of hers, steady, quiet, so intent that Audrey finally asked, "Are you supervising me?" "No," he said softly. "I just want to hear your voice reading them. In Italian, in anything that makes my mother come alive in this room again." Audrey nodded slightly and opened the first letter. In the top corner, the handwriting read, "Chicago, April 1989. It was addressed to a woman named Elena Romano, a name that made Audrey instinctively look up. "Dear Elena, Chicago is still cold as if winter never left. Roberto works all day, and Christopher has started piano lessons. The boy resembles me more than I thought. He carries a sadness in his eyes, one I never taught him to bear. Her voice was slow, warm. Every word breathed life. Lucas closed his eyes. When she spoke the name Christopher, his childhood name, the corner of his mouth trembled. Today I received a letter from southern Italy. They haven't forgotten what happened. The Murano family wants to renew an old bond. But I refused. I cannot let that past return, not after everything. Audrey paused. The Murano family. Who are they? Lucas opened his eyes. His gaze darkened. They were once allies, not anymore. They owe my family blood. Why? Because of a love that was betrayed. The answer was short, but it chilled the room. Audrey lowered her eyes to the page, reading softly. Elena, sometimes I think that if I hadn't fled Calabria, I wouldn't be alive today. They never forgive anyone who refuses a Murano proposal. But I believed in the love I chose, believed it was worth everything, even safety itself. A shiver crept down Audrey's spine. Do you think, she asked carefully, the man she's talking about was your father? Lucas nodded. Yes, he was one of the most powerful men in Chicago. But he loved my mother. And the price of that love was a war between two families, one that lasted for decades. Audrey studied him. In the soft morning light, Lucas's face looked both strong and tired. To the world, he was ruthless, heartless. But when he spoke of his mother, there was a fracture in that armor, one he covered with silence and control. You kept everything that belonged to her. Everything, he said quietly. I don't believe in religion. I believe in memory. It's the only thing that never betrays me. Audrey smiled faintly. Sometimes memory lies too. And you, he asked. What do you keep from the ones you've lost? A song. The song that brought me back here. And maybe she replied the song that forces both of us to face the past. Lucas was silent. Then, after a long pause, he asked, What do you think of the letter? I think she wasn't just writing to a friend. She was warning someone. He tilted his head. A warning. Yes, her tone. It isn't just confessional. It's as if she knew a storm was coming. Lucas stepped closer. The space between them shrank to only a few inches. And what do you think that storm was? The one you're still trying to hide. The words made him freeze. For a heartbeat, Audrey saw something flicker in his eyes, a flash of fear gone almost instantly. He turned away, lifting the cold coffee cup. You're overly perceptive. Maybe, but sometimes only the perceptive hear the echoes of truth. The air stilled. The old wooden clock ticked steady as a pulse under strain. Audrey turned back to the table and opened the second letter. Elena, last night I dreamed of the sea. Someone called my name from beneath the waves. They said, every promise must be paid with a confession. I was afraid yet calm. If one day I am gone, I hope someone will find the truth within these letters. Audrey looked up. Do you ever wonder if these letters aren't just recollections, but something to be decoded? Lucas's hands tightened. Decoded how? For what she couldn't say out loud. He gave a faint smile, not quite amused. You really are a translator who reads between the lines, because words rarely say everything people mean. Audrey folded the letter carefully. She felt something stirring beneath the surface, a heavy secret trying to rise. Lucas sat down across from her, his voice low, almost confessional. My mother died in a fire. They said it was an accident. I didn't believe them. You think she was killed? I think someone wanted her silenced. The words hung heavy, thick as smoke. Audrey stared at him for a long moment. And now you want me to find proof in the letters? Not proof, he said softly. I want to know why. A drop of coffee fell onto the table, spreading like a bruise. Audrey touched it cold. Why do you trust me? Lucas looked up. Because you sang that song as if you'd lived it. Because your voice carries the same tone as my memories. Or because you need someone who isn't afraid of you. Maybe both. They held each other's gaze silent. Between them, the box of letters seemed to breathe the past itself, waiting to be read. Outside the window, snow began to fall, slow, delicate melting into the city's warm breath. Audrey stood gathering the pages. I'll take a few letters home, translate them carefully. There might be a code hidden in her words. A code? People who live in fear always write for the future in cipher. Lucas nodded. He stepped forward, fastening her coat, a small gesture deliberate and intimate. Be careful, Audrey. Some truths shouldn't be understood too soon. She looked up at him and replied softly, and some people shouldn't be understood too late. The door closed behind her, leaving Lucas alone in the scent of old paper. He opened a drawer and pulled out an old photograph. 2 young women laughing, Maria Miller and another, whose face looked strikingly like Audrey's. Lucas whispered, barely audible, Elena Romano. If your daughter is Audrey, then she isn't just a translator. She's the message my mother left behind. The snow outside thickened, and in that dim-lit room for the first time, Lucas felt fear not of his enemies, but of the woman who had just stepped into his life, carrying the key to his past. It was a gray Tuesday afternoon in Chicago. Rain fell in thin, cold threads, striking the glass, as if trying to erase every trace of the city. Audrey sat in her small apartment, surrounded by papers, handwritten letters, and half-finished translations. The scent of cold coffee mixed with the smell of old paper, that strange blend that keeps a person both awake and lost in memories. On the table lay another letter from Maria Miller, opened and torn at the corner, its ink smudged as if someone had tried to erase it. Audrey lifted a magnifying glass and studied the handwriting closely. Between lines of longing and fear, one sentence made her stop. If anyone finds this, seek the one who bears the name R. For only they know the truth. The name R. Romano. A shiver ran through Audrey. She picked up her phone and opened her grandmother's old photo album. Black and white pictures, smiling Italian faces, standing before a seaside brick house. In one photograph, a young woman stood beside Maria Miller, same age, same smile. The note on the back read in Italian, Elena and Maria, 1978. They had been close friends. And now, Elena's granddaughter sat here reading Maria's letters. A dizzying sense of déjà vu filled Audrey's chest, familiar and terrifying at once, as if someone had written her destiny decades before she was born. Her phone rang. Lucas Miller, are you home? His voice was low, clear, but tired. Yes, I'm finishing the 4th letter. I'm coming over. There's something you need to see. He didn't wait for her consent. 15 minutes later, there was a knock at the door. Lucas stood there, white shirt clinging to his shoulders, a thick envelope in his hand. Rain slicked his hair, droplets sliding down his cheekbones, softening the sharpness of his face. You don't use umbrellas. No, I hate anything that stands between me and the sky. The answer made her smile faintly. He placed the envelope on the table, eyes glancing over the mess papers. Coffee cups, scattered letters. You've been working all night, Habit, she said. When I was a kid, I stayed up with my grandmother listening to her stories. The later it got, the more honest the memories became. And you believe memories never lie, no? Audrey looked up at him. I believe people are the ones who twist them. Lucas said nothing. For a fleeting moment, she saw something in his eyes. Not the infamous crime boss, but a man searching for the mother time had stolen. He opened the envelope and pulled out a yellowed sheet of paper. Have you ever seen this handwriting before? Audrey examined it. The cursive tilted gently, elegant and light. It's Maria's. No, Lucas said, his voice turning cold. It's my father's. She looked up sharply. Who's the letter addressed to? To my mother, 3 days before she died in the fire. Audrey began reading, slow and careful, Maria. If you still have the old letters, burn them. Don't let anyone see them. Don't let the names inside live again. They know. And they are coming. At the bottom was a trembling signature. RM. Audrey whispered. He knew who started the fire. Lucas's jaw tightened. He knew more than that. But he chose silence. Till the day he died, he never said a word. His silence filled the room like a storm cloud. He turned toward the window, staring out at the rain-slicked streets. I used to think he was weak, But the more I read my mother's letters, the more I fear there's something bigger, something that controlled even him. And me. Audrey folded the paper gently, slipping it back into the envelope. You think it was the Moranos, maybe? Or maybe someone else? What do you mean? Lucas turned his dark brown eyes glinting with suspicion. You remember the line she wrote, the one who bears the name R. I'm not sure it meant Romano. In my father's old records, there was a man named Richard Rivas. He disappeared the same year my mother died. You think he's responsible, no? He paused, his gaze steady on hers. I think the person who introduced him to my family might be Elena Romano. Audrey froze. Her heart tightened painfully. My grandmother Lucas stayed silent, neither confirming nor denying. I need the truth. The tension in the air was razor sharp. Audrey drew in a breath, forcing her voice to stay calm. You think my grandmother betrayed your mother? I think, he said quietly, in their world, no one was completely innocent. The words cut deep, cold, precise, merciless. She rose abruptly, her eyes burning. You asked me here to translate, not to accuse my family. Lucas stepped closer, eyes locked on hers. I asked you here to find the truth, Audrey. And truth doesn't care who it hurts. The space between them shrank just a few inches now. His breath brushed her skin, carrying the scent of mint and smoke. She stepped back slightly. And if I prove my grandmother's innocence, then I'll apologize, he said. In any way you ask. Silence fell heavy and fragile. Outside, a train horn wailed through the rain. Audrey's chest tightened, a mix of anger, pity, and something far more dangerous. She didn't know if she was angry at Lucas for doubting her grandmother or at herself for letting him reach her heart. Lucas turned from the window, his tone low and businesslike again. I'll have my men recheck Romano's files. You keep translating, especially the erased sections. Audrey returned to the table and picked up the last torn letter. Under the lamp's glow, she saw faint ink bleeding along the edge. Using a chemical reagent, she revealed a few blurred words. Trust the one with the star. The star, she murmured. Lucas glanced down and rolled up his sleeve. On his left wrist was a small tattoo, a 5-pointed star. Audrey's breath caught. You have it. My mother tattooed it on me when I was 10. She said it was the mark of freedom. Then maybe she was speaking to you. Lucas stared at her, long, unreadable. In that instant, something shifted between them. Not suspicion, not curiosity, but a thread thin as breath, fragile enough to break, yet strong enough to pull them both under. He spoke softly, his voice like wind through glass. Maybe my mother left her message for me through you. Audrey smiled faintly, her lips trembling. That sounds like fate. Not fate, he murmured, stepping closer, eyes falling briefly to her lips. Choice. She could feel his heartbeat aligning with hers, the rhythm of rain tapping at the window. The room blurred, a film, still caught between danger and desire. Lucas, she whispered. Yes. Have you ever thought that sometimes we're not searching for the truth? We're searching for a way to forgive it? He looked at her eyes burning like winter fire. Forgive who? Ourselves. A drop of rain slid from his hair down onto her wrist, warmer than her skin. He caught her hand, not tightly, but enough to shatter every boundary she'd built. Don't look at me like that, Audrey, he said, his voice low, almost pleading. If you do, I won't be able to stop myself. She said nothing. In that suspended moment, all walls fell, leaving only two lost souls surrounded by torn letters, fractured memories, and the same quiet loneliness. But just as the space between them began to dissolve, the phone rang. Lucas released her and stepped back. His voice changed completely when he answered sharp, controlled alert. What he said then? After a pause, secure the scene. I'm coming. He hung up, grabbed his coat, his face darkening. What happened? Audrey asked. My warehouse by the river's been hit. Not the police. Then who? Someone who used to work for him. He turned to her, his gaze sharp again, but something human still flickered underneath. Stay inside, Audrey. Don't open the door for anyone but me. You're going alone. This is my business. The door closed behind him, leaving only the lingering scent of rain and smoke. Audrey stood still, trembling. On the table, Maria Miller's letter fluttered open, releasing a small scrap of paper. The faded brown ink read, "If you ever read this, do not trust the darkness, for sometimes it wears the face of the one you love most." Audrey stared at the words for a long time. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance, mingling with the relentless rain. And she realized the war Lucas was walking into might not only be against his enemies, but against his own past. The rain from the previous evening had lasted until dawn, leaving the city soaked and strangely still. Chicago felt like it had just survived a night without breath dew clung to rooftops, and the chill crept through every window pane. Audrey sat by her small apartment window, watching steam rise from her cup of tea, her mind replaying the image of Lucas walking away into the night. She tried to continue translating the unfinished letter, but her eyes kept lingering on its final line. Sometimes darkness wears the face of the one you love most. Each word carved itself deeper into her thoughts. Her phone buzzed. A message appeared. Lucas. Tonight, 7 p.m., 1013 North Avenue. We need to talk. No explanation. No pleasantries. Just that. Yet Audrey found herself closing her notebook, slipping into a wine-colored dress, and throwing on her trench coat. She didn't know why she agreed, maybe curiosity or the quiet pull of something unspoken between them. The house on North Avenue didn't look like a mansion belonging to a man of power. It was quiet, old-fashioned, hidden behind a row of aging elm trees. The wooden door opened as soon as she rang the bell. An elderly woman greeted her with a polite nod and led her inside to the dining room. The room glowed with the light of dozens of candles. The golden warmth danced on old brick walls, reflected off crystal glasses and silver cutlery. The table was set for two. Lucas was already there, white shirt with the sleeves rolled collar slightly open, just enough to reveal a thin scar across his collarbone, the kind that told a story of violence and survival. "You came," he said, voice calm, unsurprised, as if he'd known she would. Audrey's lips curved faintly. "And if I hadn't, then I'd have come to find you." He shrugged, then smiled for the first time, a smile that felt almost real, not one rehearsed for control. Dinner was served: red wine, pasta, braised lamb. The warmth of the aroma filled the room, stirring a strange nostalgia. She sat, trying to appear composed. "You invited me just to have dinner?" "No." Lucas poured the wine, the candlelight glinting in his glass. "I invited you to talk about something I've avoided for years." She set down her fork. "That sounds like a confession." "Maybe it is." He looked straight at her. "Last night at the docks, they didn't just raid my warehouse. They left me a message." "They who, Morano?" Audrey stayed silent, waiting. "They left something in the wreckage." "My mother's wedding ring." The air went still. Her breath caught. "Are you sure I recognized it? My father's name was engraved inside." "But what I can't understand," he paused, his hand tightening around the glass, "is how it survived the fire." Audrey's chest tightened. "You mean your mother might have been alive, no?" He shook his head slowly. "I think she was killed somewhere else. The fire was just the cover." A heavy silence fell. The old clock ticked steadily, like a heartbeat being squeezed too tight. Audrey whispered, "Do you have proof?" Lucas let out a low, bitter laugh. "I have corpses of those who tried to find it." He leaned back, refilled his glass, his voice low, threaded with exhaustion. "You know, growing up in my world, no one teaches you how to trust. They only teach you how to survive. I don't fear bullets. I don't fear losing money. What I fear is truth, because once you know it, you can never go back." Audrey's tone softened. "Maybe that's why your mother wrote those letters, to tell you that sometimes not knowing is the only way to survive." Lucas looked up, eyes meeting hers. "And you believe that I believe some things are worth the risk if it means peace inside." A faint smile touched his lips. "You sound like someone who's lost before, because I have." He didn't ask more. The quiet between them felt warmer now, filled not with distance, but with understanding. Lucas studied her, his gaze steady, searching her face as though reading a language only she spoke. "You're not like anyone I've ever met. Because I'm not afraid of you. Because you make me afraid." Audrey looked up. candlelight glimmering in her eyes, soft, wet, luminous. Afraid of what? That I could trust you. She didn't know how to answer. The words, gentle as they were, struck something deep. After dinner, they moved to the living room. Lucas turned on a lamp dim, just enough to see the black and white photographs on the wall, his parents' family gatherings. And in the center, a young boy of 6 staring solemnly into the camera. "That's you?" Audrey asked quietly. Lucas nodded. "The last day my mother was alive." She stepped closer. "You look like her, especially the eyes. People say eyes are windows to the soul. But when the soul is buried, all that's left in the window is darkness." She turned to him, voice gentle. "No one is born with darkness, Lucas. It comes when the light is taken away." He fell silent. Her words pierced through the armor he'd worn his entire life. He stepped closer, close enough for her to feel the heat of his breath laced with wine. "Your light is dangerous," he murmured, "because it makes me forget who I am." Audrey didn't flinch. "Maybe you never really knew who you were. Maybe you've just been living inside other people's wounds." For a second, too, he said nothing, then slowly lifted his hand to her face. The touch was tentative, almost reverent, and it made her tremble. "You speak as if you know me better than I know myself." "No," she whispered. "I just see a man who wants to believe but doesn't dare." He leaned closer, only a breath between them now. His lips hovered near hers, and for an instant time stilled. But then Lucas froze. Something shifted behind his eyes, a shadow, a thought. He stepped back, lowering his hand. "No," he said hoarsely. "If I do this, you'll be pulled into something you can't escape." Audrey met his gaze, her voice quiet, almost aching. "I think I already am." She turned toward the balcony. The night wind swept in, carrying the faint scent of rain. Lucas stood behind her. Silent, his fist clenched at his side. He had never imagined that someone like Audrey could unsettle him, not with beauty, but with the calm kindness that cracked through his walls. A sudden ring shattered the stillness. Lucas picked up his phone, his face hardened immediately. "What?" Where he said, his tone dropping. A pause, then a single word. "Hold it. I'm coming." He hung up, turning to Audrey. "You have to leave, now." "Someone's watching the house, Murano." "Not sure, but they know who you are." Audrey froze. "What do you mean?" He stepped toward her, gripping her hand. "Your name isn't a secret anymore. You carry the Romano bloodline, Audrey. That makes you a target." Her heart lurched. "You mean they know I'm Elena's granddaughter?" "Yes. And they believe you're holding what my mother once hid." She took a step back, as if the floor had cracked beneath her. "What is it?" Lucas's gaze darkened. His voice was measured, deliberate. Evidence, something that could either bury or save both families. Their eyes locked. Outside, the wind howled, tugging the curtains. The last candle on the dining table flickered, then went out. In the half-darkness, his voice came like a whisper, almost a curse. "If they find you before I do, Audrey, it's over." She didn't know what frightened her more, the danger closing in, or the man standing before her, the one who had made the darkness feel like it had a heartbeat. Chicago didn't sleep that night. The glow from the highway lights spilled through Audrey's window, washing her apartment in shifting hues, gold-silver, then pale violet, like dreams that refused to end. But tonight, her heart wasn't at peace the way it used to be. Since that dinner on North Avenue, everything had changed. Lucas hadn't called, hadn't texted. He'd simply left her with a silence that carried weight, heavy, oppressive, like a threat half-spoken. Audrey sat on the floor, letters spread around her. Under the lamplight, she noticed something she had missed before. At the end of the 8th letter, Maria hadn't signed MM as usual, but ML. A mistake, or a message. She opened the wooden box, flipping through each letter, her pulse quickening. The last 3 letters all carried the same signature. ML. Could it stand for Maria Lanza? The name wasn't unfamiliar. Heart pounding, she pulled her laptop closer and searched the old press archives. Within minutes, a result appeared: Giovanni Lanza, former head of the Murano family, who vanished without a trace in 1989. A chill raced down her spine. If Maria had once been Lanza, then Lucas's mother wasn't just connected to the Moranos, she had been one of them. The window rattled softly. A gust of wind blew through, sending one of the letters fluttering to the floor. Audrey crossed the room and pulled the curtain shut. But as she turned, a flicker of movement caught her reflection in the glass, a man standing on the street below wearing a hat, smoking, looking up. Her stomach twisted. She didn't know if she'd really seen him, or if exhaustion was playing tricks on her, but every instinct screamed, "Someone is watching." Her phone rang. Not Lucas, an unknown number. She hesitated, then answered. A man's voice came through deep smooth with an undertone like velvet over steel. "Miss Audrey Parker." "Who is this?" "That's not important. What matters is this. The letters you're holding don't belong to Lucas Miller. They belong to us." Audrey's grip tightened. Who is us, the Morano family? Before she could respond, a cold, amused chuckle echoed down the line. "Elena Romano's granddaughter. You're just like her, always digging into things that should have stayed buried." Click. The line went dead. Audrey dropped the phone, her mind spinning. She didn't tell Lucas. He hadn't reached out anyway, but a part of her feared he already knew. And if he did, maybe he was behind that call. 3 days later, the rain had cleared, leaving the city draped in a thin fog that clung to skyscrapers like breath on glass. Audrey arrived at Lucas's building, summoned by his secretary. When she stepped into the office on the second floor, she stopped cold. Lucas stood with another man, tall, dark-haired, dressed in a navy suit. His gray eyes gleamed like smoke, and though he smiled, there was a knife edge in the gesture. "Vincent Morano," Lucas said calmly. "An old associate of mine." Morano. The name sliced through the air like a blade. Vincent extended a hand, all charm. "I've heard you're the only one who can read Maria Miller's letters. Quite an honor." "You knew her?" "Oh, yes." He smirked. "She used to be part of my family." The words hit the room like a gunshot. Audrey turned toward Lucas, but his expression was unreadably calm. "You brought me here to meet him." "I needed to verify something," Lucas replied evenly. "If the Moranos truly want peace, we have to face the past together." Vincent's gaze slid back to Audrey, sharp, playful, predatory. "And you, Miss Audrey Parker? Or should I say Audrey Romano? Perhaps you're the bridge between us." Her pulse quickened. "I have nothing to do with any of you." "Oh, but you do," Vincent said softly. "You're holding something that belongs to all of us." Enough, Lucas's voice cut in low and warning. Vincent shrugged, smiling, as if discussing the weather. "Just curiosity, old friend. If Maria truly wrote to a Romano, maybe her secret wasn't meant to be hidden." He left soon after, his amber cologne lingering in the air, rich, heavy, suffocating. Audrey watched the door close. "He knows who I am." Lucas didn't deny it. "Vincent knows everything, even things we haven't figured out yet." "You wanted me to meet him?" "No, I wanted to see how he'd react to you." "And what did you get from it?" Lucas's eyes darkened, conflict flashing beneath the surface. "Confirmation that he knew my mother too well to be coincidence." Audrey's breath caught. "You think he loved her?" "No." His voice dropped rough and raw. "I think he killed her." Silence filled the room. Outside, the gray light dimmed. The rain began again. Audrey didn't know what to believe anymore. The man standing before her, caught between vengeance and pain, was drifting into darkness faster than he realized. "Lucas," she whispered, "if you keep following this path, it'll consume you." He smiled faintly, a broken, weary smile. "You think I have a choice? There's always a choice." "No, Audrey. Men like me only go forward. Stopping means dying." The words made her shiver, and for the first time she saw the loneliness buried in his eyes, the kind no light could reach. He stepped closer, his tone quiet but commanding. "Don't worry about me, but if I tell you to leave, you leave. No questions. What are you hiding now?" "Not hiding." He brushed his hand against her cheek, his touch cold as steel. "Protecting you." She said nothing, just stood there, her breath mingling with his every question, dissolving in the space between them. That night, Audrey returned home. But when she flicked on the light, her chest went cold. The window was open. The curtains fluttered. On the table, the wooden box lay pried open. The letters were gone, all except one sheet of paper placed neatly in the center. The ink was still wet. "Not everything is as it seems. Ask Lucas about the man named Franco." Her hand trembled. Franco. The name appeared in one of the old letters, the trusted aide of Lucas's father. Maria had once written, "I fear Franco more than Giovanni Morano, because he knows the secret I carry, the one no one must ever learn." Audrey sank into her chair, mind spinning. If Franco was alive, he could be the one who stole the letters. And if so, he was coming for Lucas. It was late. She grabbed her phone and called Lucas. No answer, again. And again silence. She threw on her coat and ran out into the rain. By the time she reached the Miller building, her hair was drenched, her hands frozen. The guard said Lucas was upstairs in a conference room on the 10th floor. Meeting with someone named Franco. Audrey bolted for the elevator. Her heart pounded in her throat. The doors opened to a marble hallway. Light spilled from the conference room door, left slightly ajar. She crept closer. Voices drifted out, 2 men. Franco's voice was older, raspy, but strong. "You've learned the truth, Lucas. Your mother didn't die in that fire. She was moved to protect the child." What child? Lucas's voice was low, dangerous. A pause. Then Franco said slowly, "The child who bears the name Romano." Audrey froze. Her pulse stopped. She clapped a hand over her mouth to keep from gasping. "You're lying," Lucas hissed. "I wish I were," Franco said. Maria saved a baby and hid it under the name Parker. The hallway seemed to collapse around her. She staggered back, bracing against the wall, her vision spinning. Did Lucas know? If he did, what would he do when he realized she, Audrey Parker, was that child Maria had saved? The bloodline linking both warring families. The door swung open. Lucas stepped out, his eyes black with rage and disbelief. He stopped when he saw her. For a long moment, no one spoke, only the steady sound of rain against glass, like a heartbeat breaking apart. "You heard." Audrey's voice was raw. Lucas said nothing. His gaze burned a storm of pain, fury, and betrayal. She swallowed hard. "Lucas, if your mother saved me, then maybe between us—" "Don't." His voice cracked low and shaking. He took one step closer, his words like a blade against the air. "If what Franco said is true, then you're the reason my mother died." The corridor turned to ice. Audrey stood frozen, her hands clenched until her palms bled. Lucas turned away, voice thick with something unspoken. "Leave, Audrey, and don't let me see you again." The door slammed behind him, and she was left alone, standing in the cold, hollow hallway where the past had just risen from the ashes to destroy everything they had. Chicago blazed with light that night, but its brightness had never been enough to drive away the darkness. After the horrifying confrontation in the Miller building, Audrey couldn't remember whether she'd walked or run down the stairs. The rain lashed against her skin like it was trying to wash everything away, but some wounds could never be cleaned. She sat on a stone bench across from the Chicago River, watching the water churn beneath the streetlights. Each raindrop that hit the surface felt like a fragment of memory breaking apart. If Maria saved me, does that mean his mother died because of me? The question repeated over and over until her throat tightened with guilt. Her phone buzzed. A single message from Vincent Morano. "Now you've seen him for who he really is. If you want the rest of the truth, meet me at midnight, Warehouse 47 South Pier." Audrey stared at the words, her heart pounding unevenly. She knew it was a trap, but if she didn't go, she'd be haunted forever by half-truths and unanswered questions. She had nothing left to lose, except herself. Warehouse 47 sat in the old dockyard, once Morano territory. Rusted cranes loomed above like ghosts of the past. The air reeked of metal and salt, sharp, heavy, suffocating. Audrey stepped inside. Her footsteps echoed against the damp concrete. No one was there, only a few dim yellow lights flickering from above, forming shallow pools of light in the dark. A voice came from behind her. "You're earlier than I expected, Bella Ragazza." Vincent Morano. He emerged from the shadows, coat soaked with rain, a half-smile curling beneath the haze of cigarette smoke. "Why did you call me here?" she asked. "To tell you the truth? You think I'll believe you after everything you don't have to believe? Just listen." Vincent stepped closer, each movement unhurried, deliberate. "Maria didn't die because of you. She died because she betrayed me." Audrey froze. "What are you talking about?" "She was once the woman I loved," he said softly, almost trembling. "But she chose Miller and took with her a secret that nearly destroyed both families. She hid Elena Romano's daughter, your mother, and later Maria herself saved you when your father betrayed them all." Audrey shook her head. "You're lying. No, cara mia, I'm telling you the truth. You weren't abandoned. You're the witness to a sin Maria tried to erase." He stopped inches away, eyes burning with something between pain and obsession. "And now Lucas knows. What do you think he'll do?" "Forgive you, no. He'll choose his bloodline." Audrey's voice shook. "Why tell me this?" Vincent smiled faintly. "Because I need you. A Miller will never believe a Marano, but he'll believe you. You want me to betray him? I want you to save him if you still have the courage." His voice dropped dark and urgent. "Tonight they're going to attack the Miller estate. The order didn't come from me, it came from Franco. He's back. And he means to end everything." The warehouse doors burst open. Gunfire ripped through the air. Vincent turned, shoving Audrey behind a stack of crates. "Run!" he shouted. But it was too late. A bullet tore across his shoulder, red, splattering across the wet floor like rain turned to blood. Vincent Audrey screamed, but he was already collapsing. Another voice rang out. Cold, controlled. "Save your breath, Miss Parker." "He's lived long enough." Franco stepped forward. Gray suit, silver hair, eyes as sharp and lifeless as steel. "Why?" Audrey gasped, backing away. "Two families, one secret, and a foolish girl who thought she could change fate," he said. "You were never meant to exist." He raised his gun. "You don't deserve to die, but your existence destroys the balance." Audrey shut her eyes. The trigger clicked, but no shot came. Instead, an explosion thundered from behind Franco. Shards of glass shattered and rained down like falling stars. "Lucas!" He burst in through the smoke, dressed in black, gun in hand, eyes blazing with fury. "Step away from her," Franco chuckled. "Ah, finally, the prodigal son. Touch her and I swear you'll what Lucas. Kill me like your father killed her mother." Lucas froze. "You're lying. Ask Maria yourself if you can find her body." "Don't listen to him," Audrey shouted. "He's trying to divide us." But Lucas had already pulled the pin on his gun. Franco fired first. The bullet grazed Lucas's shoulder, blood splattering across the floor, but he stayed standing, firing back. The warehouse erupted with gunfire and breaking glass. Audrey crawled toward Vincent, who lay motionless on the floor. Lucas shot Franco in the leg, sending him sprawling. He grabbed Audrey's hand. "Go!" he barked. They sprinted toward the door, but before they could reach it, Franco seized another gun and aimed. The shot rang out. Lucas shoved Audrey aside. The sound echoed, then silence. He fell, crimson blooming across his chest, spreading fast over the slick concrete. "Kiss?" Audrey screamed, catching him as he collapsed. His hand, slick with blood, reached for her face. "Don't cry. I thought I could live without trusting anyone. But you made me believe again. Don't say that. You'll be fine." "Listen," he whispered, voice fading. "If I don't make it, there's a metal box in my library. My mother left something inside. Something only you can understand. Lucas, please." He gave a faint smile, blood staining his lips. "I promise. If I survive, I'll take you away from all of this." Outside, sirens wailed. Blue and red lights flashed against the warehouse walls. Miller's men stormed in. Franco was gone. Audrey looked around, tears mixing with the rain. "Get him to a hospital!" she shouted. They carried Lucas away, and all she could do was watch her heart tearing apart in her chest. Dawn broke. The hospital glowed under sterile white light. Audrey sat outside the operating room, Lucas's blood still on her hands. Each time the red indicator light flickered, her heart clenched painfully. The door opened. The surgeon's face was grim. The bullet missed his heart by less than a centimeter. "We're doing everything we can." Audrey bowed her head into her trembling hands. All she wanted was to see him open his eyes again. Outside, the rain had stopped. A single beam of morning light shone through the window, falling across a smear of blood on the floor like a memory that refused to fade. From her pocket, she pulled out the last letter from Maria, the one Lucas had given her to translate. Between trembling lines of ink, she noticed a sentence she hadn't read before. "If my son ever meets the child I once saved, tell him this: sometimes to love truly, you must be willing to lose the name written in your blood." Audrey closed the letter. Tears fell smudging the ink. In the room beyond, Lucas was fighting between life and death. And she knew whether he lived or not, tonight had changed everything. There was no longer a line between love and vengeance, between past and present. Only two souls remained bound by a love born in darkness and a bullet through the heart. 3 days. 3 endless days surrounded by the steady hum of machines and the sterile scent of antiseptic. Time inside the hospital stretched slow, heavy, and cold. Audrey sat by the bed, dark circles under her eyes, her hand still wrapped around Lucas's. The man who had once terrified an entire city now lay motionless, pale beneath the tangle of tubes and wires so fragile that she was afraid to even look too long. "You said you'd take me away from all this," she whispered, her voice dissolving into the sterile air. "But now you're lying here as if the moment I blink you'll disappear." No response, only the faint rhythmic beep. Beep. Of the heart monitor, the pulse of a promise still holding on. That afternoon, the doctor told her Lucas's condition had stabilized. The bullet had been removed in time, but his coma might last indefinitely. Audrey listened, feeling something inside her fracture quietly. She didn't leave the hospital. Coffee went cold on the table beside her, her body numb from exhaustion, but her mind stayed awake, tethered to him. Vincent Morano had survived the warehouse explosion, though critically injured and sent to another hospital. Franco had vanished. Rumors said rival factions were hunting him, but no one knew if he was alive. On Tuesday night, Chicago rained again. Audrey sat by the window, tracing the raindrops as they slid down the glass. Memories flooded her mind. Lucas's eyes, his voice when he said, "I trust you," and the faint smile he gave before collapsing in her arms. She remembered Maria's final line in the letter. "Sometimes to love truly, you must dare to lose the bloodline written in your name." Audrey didn't know why, but those words had followed her into every sleepless night. The next morning, she woke in the chair beside his bed. The monitor still beeped steady familiar. But then something changed. A pause, a broken rhythm, then a quickening. Audrey jolted upright. Lucas's fingers moved barely but enough. "Lucas," she breathed, leaning in close. His eyelashes trembled, then slowly lifted. The blurred confusion in his gaze cleared, and he saw her. "You," he rasped, voice hoarse and faint. Audrey laughed through her tears, clutching his hand tighter. "Yes, it's me." He looked around, frowning in pain. "Where am I?" "The hospital?" "You survived Lucas." For a moment, silence. Then he shut his eyes, his breath uneven. "I remember. Franco, and you—" "Don't," she said quickly, squeezing his hand. "It's over. You're safe now." Lucas opened his eyes again. Fear and faith flickered there, warring in the same space. "Were you crying?" "No." She smiled weakly. "Just tired." "You're a terrible liar," he murmured. And even with his lips pale, the corner of his mouth lifted in the faintest smile that made her heart ache. Recovery was slow, but each day brought him further back. He spoke little, mostly watching, remembering piecing together a world that had once shattered around him. One evening, as Audrey changed his bandages, Lucas asked quietly, "Do you believe in destiny?" "I'm not sure. If there's such a thing as a past life, I must have owed you one." "You think so?" "No," he said softly, eyes calm and steady. "I know it." Audrey paused, her hand still on his shoulder. "And if destiny does exist, what do you think it wants from us?" Lucas smiled faintly. Maybe it just wants to see how much pain two people can bear before they finally trust each other. She didn't reply. His words weren't poetic, but they felt like a thread thin, yet unbreakable binding two souls that had nearly been lost. That night, after the nurses left, only the two of them remained. Moonlight spilled into the room, silvering the white hospital sheets. Audrey sat beside him, reading aloud a passage from Maria's unfinished letter. One Lucas had never heard before, love. If deep enough, becomes forgiveness. And forgiveness, if true enough, becomes a new beginning. When she finished, Lucas whispered, "Do you think my mother ever forgave my father? Maybe. She knew hatred can't feed love. And you, can you forgive me? For doubting you?" Audrey looked at him, voice gentle but firm. "It's not about forgiveness. I was never angry with you. I was just hurt." Lucas went quiet. Then slowly he reached up and touched her cheek. "I don't deserve your kindness. No one does, Lucas. We just try to become worthy of it." Outside, rain began to fall again, soft against the glass. Lucas took her hand and pressed it to his chest. "Do you hear that? What, my heart? It's still beating. Because of you." Her throat tightened. She didn't know whether to cry or smile. Instead, she nodded, tears glimmering, and bent down to kiss the bandaged hand that held hers. A week later, Lucas was discharged. He refused the security escort, insisted on driving himself home. Audrey rode beside him, clutching the bag of medications, watching the city slide by outside the rain-streaked window. The streets looked familiar, yet everything felt different. Maybe because they were different. As they turned on to Michigan Avenue, Lucas said quietly, "I used to think this city was nothing but blood and lies. But now, it looks beautiful." "That's because this time you're seeing it with your heart," Audrey replied softly. "Not with your scars." He smiled, and for the first time his eyes held something she'd never seen before, peace. "You make me want to be better, Audrey. But the world doesn't forgive men like me. Then we'll learn to live without its forgiveness." Her words made him chuckle. "You always make darkness sound like it has a way out." When they arrived at the Miller estate, Lucas stopped in front of the library, the one he had mentioned before he lost consciousness in the warehouse. He unlocked an old iron cabinet and pulled out a dusty wooden box. "This," he said, handing it to her, "is what my mother wanted you to see." Inside was a worn leather journal and a faded photograph of Maria Miller as a young woman standing beside another woman. Elena Romano. Audrey's hands trembled. They were friends. Lucas nodded. Not just friends, foster sisters. They swore never to let their children live under the weight of hate. But somehow, we repeated what they feared most. She opened the journal to the first page. In Maria's delicate handwriting, it read, "If my son ever meets the girl who bears the Romano name, tell him not to run, because she will be the way both of them are saved." Audrey looked up, her eyes shimmering. Maria knew we'd meet, maybe. Or maybe she just believed that love would find a way. Lucas stepped closer, his hand resting gently on her cheek, his gaze softer than sunlight. "I used to think what we had was wrong. But if fate was my mother's hand guiding us, then maybe in the end, everything was right." She didn't answer, just rested her forehead against his. The stillness between them felt fragile and sacred, like the calm that exists only between storms. Outside, dawn was breaking. Light streamed through the window, glinting off the open journal. On the final page, Maria's words shone like a prophecy. "True love doesn't end wars. It teaches us how to survive within them." Audrey closed the book and looked up at Lucas. In the soft morning light, she didn't see the feared mafia boss of Chicago, but the man who had learned to trust, to forgive, and at last to love. And for the first time in forever, she believed hope was real. Autumn mornings in Chicago were colder than usual. The sun hadn't yet pierced the fog before the gray clouds swallowed it whole. Inside the Miller estate, the sound of a piano drifted through the hall, slow, somber. Each note like the echo of footsteps moving through memory. Lucas sat at the piano, eyes half closed, his face still pale from the long days spent in recovery. Audrey stood by the doorway, silent, watching. The light through the thin curtain carved him in half. Part marble, part warmth, as if the sculptor who made him had stopped midway, unsure whether to finish or let him remain unfinished. Since waking from his coma, Lucas had spoken little. The bursts of rage were gone. So were the commands. He looked at the world differently now, as though between life and death, he had left part of himself behind in the dark. "I didn't know you could play," Audrey said softly. He looked up and gave a faint smile. "My mother taught me when I was little. She said music was the only place where there was no blood. And now, I'm not so sure." She came closer, sitting beside him. "If the world once made you lose faith, maybe start again with a new melody." Lucas studied her face, calm, steady, and impossibly gentle. "You say that like you believe everything can start over." "Not everything," she said quietly. "But love can." He said nothing, only looked down at her hand, small, warm, trembling ever so slightly. Not from fear, but from the effort of holding back emotion. A new melody began. Their hands moved together across the keys, his guided by memory, hers by feeling. The sound that filled the room was fragile, clear, and tender, like all the things they'd never had the courage to say aloud. That afternoon, word came quickly. Vincent Morano had been discharged from the hospital. He wanted to meet Lucas, not to threaten him, but to end everything. Lucas was silent for a long time before agreeing. The meeting was set at an old lakeside villa. Audrey insisted on going with him, but he refused. "I have to go alone," he said. "This is between two men. And if he doesn't just want to talk, I won't let it come to that." She looked at him, standing in the dim light of dusk, his eyes calm, steady, and resigned, as if ready for whatever ending waited for him. Before leaving, he turned back to her. "If I don't make it back," he said, "open my mother's journal, the last page. The answer you're looking for is there." The car door closed. His silhouette disappeared into the fog. Night fell. Audrey couldn't stay still. Something inside her, a pulse, a whisper, told her something was wrong. She opened Maria's journal, as Lucas had said. The final page was written in smudged black ink, but the words were still legible. "If Lucas finds this, tell him this. Truth kills no one. Only those too afraid to face it die inside. Love isn't forgiveness. It's the courage to love even when it might cost you everything." Her fingers clenched around the page. The unease grew sharper. She called Lucas, no answer. Then her phone lit up. A message from an unknown number. "If you want to save him, come to the North Lake Villa." Alone. She didn't think, she just went. The villa by the lake was dark, save for one dim lamp glowing through a front window. Wind swept through the trees, rattling the windows. The air was thick, the stillness before a storm. She pushed the door open. The scent of gunpowder and damp wood filled the air. Vincent sat in a chair at the center of the room, a glass of whiskey in one hand, blood soaking his shirt. "You're faster than I expected," he rasped, voice rough but still wearing a smile. "He's downstairs." "What have you done to Lucas?" Audrey demanded, fists tightening. Vincent raised an eyebrow. "Relax. I didn't kill him. Not out of kindness, but because he deserves to know who the real traitor is." Her heart skipped. "What do you mean?" Vincent set his glass down and looked straight at her. "Franco didn't just betray the Millers. He betrayed me. And he's still alive." He pulled a photograph from his coat and tossed it onto the table. In the picture stood Franco beside a woman. Audrey froze. The woman was the maid from the Miller estate, the one she had trusted completely. "She gave Franco Lucas's location," Vincent said, "in exchange for her own life. And tonight, he's coming here." A sound echoed from below a door creaking open. Vincent's eyes hardened. The game started. "If you still love him, go, before it's too late." Audrey rushed down the narrow staircase. The basement was dim and damp, the light bulb above flickering weakly. "Lucas," she whispered. No reply. Then from the corner came a weak groan. She ran toward it. Lucas was slumped against the wall, his hands bound, blood seeping from his shoulder. "You're hurt," she gasped, cutting the ropes with a small knife. "I'm fine," he breathed. "You shouldn't have come. I couldn't leave you." Footsteps thundered above. "Franco." Audrey helped Lucas to his feet. She looked around for another exit, but the basement door opened before she could move. Franco appeared, gun in hand, eyes glacial. "So the two of you finally meet," he said coldly, "in the same place your mother died." "What are you?" Lucas spat. Franco chuckled. "The one keeping Maria Miller's promise." She tried to bury the truth. "I intend to unearth it because she loved the wrong man." "You killed her." Audrey's voice shook. "No, your father did," he said flatly. "I just cleaned up the mess." The words hit like bullets. Lucas' staggered disbelief etched across his face. "No, you're lying. You think your father was noble?" Franco sneered. "He killed Maria when he found out she carried the child of a Moreno." Silence swallowed the room. Audrey looked at Lucas, his eyes hollow, his world collapsing. "He's lying," she whispered, trembling. "You're not Morano's son." "You can't be." Franco smirked. "Don't believe me, test it. But you won't live long enough to know the result." He raised the gun. Audrey lunged forward, shoving Lucas aside. The shot rang out. The bullet tore past her shoulder, searing pain flooding her arm. Lucas roared, grappling with Franco. The gun fired again. Franco fell eyes wide, fingers still gripping the trigger. Lucas, panting, blood streaking his face, looked down at the man who'd haunted them all. Audrey clutched her wound, pale but conscious. He dropped to his knees beside her, pulling her into his arms. "You're hit." "It's nothing," she whispered weakly. "As long as you're here." He held her tightly, pressing his forehead against hers. "I thought I'd lost you again." "You won't," she breathed. "We've survived the sins of the past. We'll survive this too." Sirens wailed outside. Miller's men and the police had arrived. Lucas lifted her carefully, guiding her toward the stairs. The first light of dawn spilled through the open doorway, catching their faces, tired, bruised, but alive. The darkness was gone. What remained were two people, broken, but still breathing, still loving. Audrey looked up at the lake, the light shattering across its surface. She felt her heart beating again for the first time in days, not from fear, but from faith. Lucas squeezed her hand gently. "It's over, Audrey." She smiled faintly, eyes glistening. "No, it's just beginning." The wind carried the scent of water and morning light as if the whole city exhaled after a long, violent storm. A month had passed since the explosion at the lakeside villa. Chicago looked as if it had been washed clean, the sky bluer, the wind softer, people speaking to each other with calmer voices. But for Audrey and Lucas, peace didn't come all at once. It was something they had to learn again slowly, gently, piece by piece between wounds that had yet to heal. Lucas was officially cleared of all charges. Franco's case was closed as self-defense. Vincent Morano had vanished after that night. No one knew if he was dead or alive, only whispers that he had left America carrying with him the last fragments of old secrets. Audrey no longer lived in her small apartment. She had moved into the Miller estate not for the luxury, but because Lucas wanted her close. Not just for his peace of mind, but because he feared that if she left, everything might dissolve like a dream at dawn. In the mornings, she made coffee in the kitchen. The aroma blended with the scent of old wood warming the house from within. Lucas sat at the table reading the newspaper, calm, composed. But the moment she smiled, he would look up instinctively. "What are you staring at?" Audrey asked, stirring her cup. "At the person who makes this house smell like happiness." "You exaggerate." "No," he said, lips curving faintly. "Before you came, it only smelled like gunpowder." She laughed softly, but her eyes grew tender. "I'm not trying to change you, Lucas." "I know. Maybe that's why you already have." She went quiet. Some truths didn't need to be proven, only felt. That afternoon, they visited Maria Miller's grave. The cemetery lay outside the city on a gentle hill, brushed by silver light. The wind whispered through the dry trees like a sigh from the past. Audrey placed a bouquet of white lilies on the cold stone. "She once saved me, but I never got to thank her." Lucas stood beside her, his gaze distant. She'd understand. He knelt and touched the marble. "I've walked through everything you were afraid of, Mother. But in the end, I learned love doesn't make us weaker. It makes us human." Audrey bowed her head. "If she were here, she'd be proud of you." "No," he said with a faint smile. "She'd just say, 'You finally listened to your heart instead of your gun.'" They both laughed, but the laughter trembled with tears. That evening, rain began to fall as they returned home. Audrey stood by the window, watching the drops streak down the glass. Rain no longer frightened her. It only sounded like someone quietly retelling an old story. Lucas came up behind her, draping his jacket over her shoulders. Still cold when it rains? No, just thinking. How fast everything changed. Sometimes I'm afraid it's only temporary. You're afraid of losing me. She didn't answer, but her eyes did. Lucas gently turned her toward him. I'm afraid too. But if love is the only thing we've chosen, then maybe fear is part of it. You talk like someone who's lost everything. Because I have, he said quietly. And this time, I don't want to lose anything else. He kissed her forehead, not in desire, but in promise. The next morning, a letter arrived from Italy. It was signed VM. Inside was a single photograph, Vincent standing on a pier, the Ligurian Sea behind him, sunlight blazing over the water. On the back, a message was written in neat black ink. I'm not dead. I've just withdrawn from a war that no longer needs blood. Tell Lucas I owe him a sunrise. Audrey folded the photo, her eyes thoughtful. Maybe even those born in darkness still want to see the light once more. Lucas nodded. That's why I believe everyone deserves a chance to find their redemption. That night, they went to Lake Michigan. The sky had cleared after the rain. The water shimmered with city lights. Audrey walked barefoot on the damp sand, her white dress fluttering in the breeze. Do you ever wonder, she asked, what would have happened if we never met? Lucas walked beside her, eyes on the waves. I would still be alive, but only existing. And you, I'd still be translating dead people's letters, never realizing I was missing my own story. He stopped and took her hand. We found each other among ruins, and yet we discovered something the untouched never have. What's that, faith? Not in the world and each other. She looked at him, eyes shimmering beneath the lights. Will that faith last? Lucas? He smiled faintly, pressing a kiss to her forehead. If it's born from pain, it'll last longer than happiness. By the time they returned home, it was late. In the library, the soft yellow light still glowed. Lucas opened a drawer and pulled out an old sketch his mother had hidden, a drawing of a woman holding a child unfinished. I used to think she drew herself and me, he said. But now I'm not sure. Audrey traced a finger along the edge of the paper. Maybe she drew it for both of us. Two children with different names, both needing forgiveness. Lucas turned to her, eyes calm and full. You know, I once believed power was the only way to survive. But now I understand the strongest person is the one who dares to trust what's fragile. Love, she asked softly. You, he said. Audrey smiled through tears. I used to be afraid to love you, because loving you meant walking into the darkness everyone feared. But now I know only through love can we truly see the light. He pulled her close, kissing her slowly, not in urgency, but as apology, gratitude, and a new beginning all at once. Outside, the rain began again, soft, rhythmic, like a distant lullaby. The next morning, Lucas woke early. He stood on the balcony, coffee in hand, watching the city awaken under pale gold light. Audrey came out wrapping a blanket around her shoulders, leaning against him. You look different, she said. How so peaceful? He smiled, brushing her hair back. Maybe because I'm watching the sunrise with the woman I love. She rested her head on his shoulder. I used to think happiness was something that only existed in books. But now I see it's real. It's just the courage to believe in what we fear losing. Lucas smiled. Then, believe this, I won't let you lose me again. They stood there together, bathed in morning light as the city stirred awake. Sunlight filtered through the glass, soft and hazy, wrapping them in warmth. Every tragedy, every loss, every shadow had become part of their story. Not to be forgotten, but to remind them that true love can bloom even where nothing seems left to grow. Audrey took his hand. We've come too far to turn back. All that's left is the road ahead. Lucas nodded. And this time we'll walk it in the light. Outside, the sun rose higher. The wind carried the scent of damp earth after rain. Peace, real peace, had finally come home. Spring returned to Chicago. Across the sky, flocks of birds curved in graceful arcs, gliding over Lake Michigan, where sunlight spilled like liquid gold. The city felt renewed, gentler, slower, and somehow warmer beneath the morning light. A year had passed since that fateful night at the lakeside villa. The wounds had healed, but the scars remained soft reminders that love never comes easily. Lucas sat in his new office, its white walls bright with daylight. No more shadows of guns or iron safes full of secrets. They'd been replaced by books, music sheets, and framed photographs, one of Maria Miller standing beside Elena Romano. The door opened. Audrey entered carrying a cup of tea scented faintly with lavender. "You're still inside?" she asked. Lucas looked up, smiling. "Finishing the final report for the foundation." "I still can't believe you've become a man of paperwork." "That's the miracle," he chuckled. "You made even someone like me learn what peace feels like." Audrey smiled, settling beside him. "The Miller-Romano Foundation." The name still sounds strange. "No," he said softly, shaking his head. "It's exactly what my mother and your grandmother wanted. Two families once buried in blood, now saving children who never had a choice. That's what real justice looks like." She looked at him with quiet pride. "You really have changed, Lucas." He took her hand. "No, I'm just learning to become the man you always believed I could be." A breeze drifted through the open window, carrying sunlight and the fragrance of tea. The air no longer felt heavy, only calm, like the stillness that follows a storm. That afternoon, they attended the foundation's opening ceremony. The old Miller office building had been transformed into a shelter for children orphaned by violence. The structure still carried its vintage charm, but now it overflowed with light. Audrey stepped onto the stage, microphone in hand. Her voice was gentle yet unwavering. "Not long ago, this place symbolized power. Today it stands for new beginnings. Because sometimes to save the past, we must dare to rewrite it with kindness." Lucas watched her from the audience. And in that moment, he understood some people enter our lives like storms, tearing everything apart, only to teach us how to stand tall in the light afterward. When her speech ended, the hall fell silent for a heartbeat, then erupted in applause. Audrey looked down, meeting his gaze amid the crowd. The world seemed to shrink to just the two of them, and the glow that bound them together. After the event, they walked along the lakeshore. The sunset poured across the water like red wine, the final light brushing Audrey's hair until it glimmered like silk. "Do you remember the first day we met?" she asked. Lucas laughed. "How could I forget the stubborn translator who called me paranoid? And you told me I didn't understand that the world runs on blood." "I was wrong," he said gently, taking her hand. "The world runs on love. I just took too long to see it." She smiled. "And now?" "Now," he said, eyes soft, "I want to live that way forever." They fell silent. The lake breeze was cool, but their hearts were warm. When night fell, Lucas opened the car trunk and took out a small box. No kneeling, no flowers, no candles, only the two of them beneath the faint glow of the street lamps. He opened the lid, revealing a simple silver ring that shimmered softly. "I once said I didn't believe in destiny," he murmured with a rough laugh. "But if it exists, then mine is you." Tears glistened in Audrey's eyes. "Lucas." He pressed a finger gently to her lips. "You don't have to answer now. Just promise me that no matter how the world changes, you'll keep choosing to stay. Not for me, for yourself. Because you deserve this happiness." She nodded silently. They stood there beneath the night sky, the city lights reflecting on the still water. Lucas slid the ring onto her finger and kissed it softly. "You know," he said quietly, "Maria once told me, love isn't something to own, it's something to keep safe." "She was right," Audrey whispered. "We don't own anything except this moment." A week later, they left Chicago for the Amalfi Coast, the place where Maria had written her final letter. The sea was deep blue, the sunlight dazzling white houses, stacked like petals along the cliffs. Audrey sat by the balcony, her hair tousled by the wind. Lucas had brought along the old piano, the only thing he'd kept from the Miller estate. He placed it by the window overlooking the sea and began to play a melody he'd never finished. "What's it called?" she asked. "Return to Light," he replied. "And how does it end?" He smiled. "It doesn't, not yet, because the story only ends when we stop loving." She laughed softly. "Then maybe it'll never end." He stopped playing, walked toward her, the sunset glowing in his eyes. "Thank you, Audrey," he whispered, "for coming, for believing, for loving me even when I didn't deserve it." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "No one deserves love forever, Lucas. We just need to be brave enough to choose each other again every day." Night fell, and the sea lay still as glass. They sat side by side on the stone steps, fingers intertwined. No words because they didn't need them. They both knew true love isn't about escaping the darkness, but walking through it together. A shooting star streaked across the sky. Audrey closed her eyes, whispering a wish. "What did you wish for?" Lucas asked. "I wished that if someone out there is hurting like we once did, they'll find their own light too." He was silent for a moment, then nodded. "Then we'll tell our story, so they'll know that no matter how many times the storm breaks them, there's always a place to return to. True love doesn't come to save you. It teaches two souls the courage to face the darkness within themselves. No love is perfect. There are only those who dare to choose each other again after everything. And if you're reading this now, believe that the light still exists, not at the end of the road, but in the way you take someone's hand and whisper, 'We're still here.'"